is how are our devices, though, just trying to bring in everybody in that's not read the book, how is it shaping our faith?
Yeah. So,
and feel free to nerd out. Let's nerd out together.
I'm trying to think through where to start.
There's so much. I know I gave you a loaded question. There's so much to go any direction. Pick one and we'll, choose your own adventure.
Yeah, I think one way in is to think about what kind of story our digital practices and our digital devices are telling us. That is, when I'm on social media, what kind of story am I living into when I am posting and thinking about what other people are thinking about me? I think our digital practices tell us, when you're on social media, when you're keeping up with your emails, we get a story about how life is about productivity, right? Like making sure I have my inbox at 0, right? We get a story about how we need to present ourselves in a way that is quantifiably affirming, right? That shows not just you, but everyone else how popular you are, right? How awesome everybody thought that picture that you posted was. It tells us
why am I feeling conviction right now? Why am I feeling conviction in all of this? You're making me convicted.
Well, it's the story. I mean, it's the story we live in this society, right? Or like even when you're at that incredible sunset, we're told that we've got to take it as an object and post it, right? That's actually what we're supposed to do in that moment, right? That's like the meaningful thing to do rather than just be there, right? Taking it in yourself. So there's a story, right? That all these practices are guiding us, nudging us, pushing us towards. And it's a story that ultimately, I think, is about scarcity. We don't have enough time. We need more people to affirm us. We've got to capture everything, right? Put it online, right? And then when you think about what the Christian faith story is, in some ways, it's the exact opposite on all of those fronts, right? The Christian faith is a story of abundance, even when it looks like there's only 2 fish and a couple loaves, right? Right? It's a story about how the one who has no productivity, the person that looks useless, is actually of incredible worth, right? It's a story about how our identity and sense of being is not dependent on what our society or what these other people think of us, but our identity is rooted in the love that God has for us, right? So if we just think, so I'm taking your cue here. I'm nerding out, right?
This
is fairly abstract.
Actually, right? I feel like I'm in a counseling session. So I just want to lay back and talk about my youth and how many things have affected me in my life, because I feel like you are crawling around in so many people's heads, and how, because I don't think people think about that. I don't think we stop and think about why we do what we do. We just do. And you're calling us to stop and reflect on, why do we feel like we need to do that? What's that pressure internally, that vacuum that we're trying to meet God in? Or we talk about, G.K. Chesterton, when he said, when a man knocks on the door of a brothel, he's really looking for God. In many ways, it's the equivalent of when I go online, I'm looking for something and I'm trying to say something, get an affirmation. But no, keep nerding out. This is awesome.
Yeah, well, I think, what you're saying right now about Chesterton, it's about appetites, right? And this is where I really leaned into the work of Jamie Smith's from Desiring the Kingdom and You Are What You Love,
Mhm.
where he presents this Augustinian view of human beings as being creatures of appetite, right? And that in the end of the day, our appetites are for God, right? But we will often look everywhere else, but right. And I think so many of our digital practices and routines are exactly that, exactly as you said. We are searching for affirmation, we are searching for meaning and sense of accomplishment. And as I write in the book, in the end of the day, we're looking for connection with other people, right? Like we want to belong and we want to experience communion, right? Is the word. But so often our technologies, and I think so many of us feel it, right? Like it doesn't get us all the way there. It doesn't get us the communion we're actually searching for with other people, and certainly not with God. And so one of the, I think the larger concerns I have about our digital practices is just the pervasiveness of it, right? The sort of, not just that it's 24/7 and there's, social media feeds and emails calling to us all the time, but even when we're not at our laptops, even when we're not on our devices, even when we're not listening to a podcast, right? Like we might just be out walking or something. I know it's too cold for a lot of people to be walking anywhere. But even when we're not on our devices, so much of our consciousness has actually become dedicated to thinking about what is happening in the digital and preoccupied that way, in such a way that I would argue is, it's, I think about the Christian contemplative tradition, right? And how there's always been a critique, you didn't need technologies like what we have today for people to experience noise in their heads, right? But that we now, even though all of humanity has surely struggled with the noise in their minds, right? Now we are living in a time where it is structurally all the more difficult to,
Oh my gosh, yes,
create, design, intentionally carve out space, right, in our lives, to create space for God to speak into, to even hear our own thoughts, right? And because so many of us, and all of these things that I'm saying, and the only reason why I could write any of this is because I experience every single thing, every single piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm right. That's the only reason I can say these things, is because like I know, like I feel every bit of it, right? We're feeling stress, we're feeling anxiety. It's like I don't want to stop and slow down because I'm afraid of what I'm going to hear if I turn everything off, right? It's scary, right? And so I get it, but at the same time, it's like, but the very answer, right? The answer is in the stillness, is in the silence that will allow the presence of God to actually become clear to us, right? Like the presence of God is here already. Like, it's not like we need to summon God, right, to us. It's like, no, the presence of God is here. We're just kind of filling ourselves with all these other things that we're not even noticing it most of the time. And I think that's the part of our discipleship that I feel most burdened by, I think, for the church today, is how do we, I think with the way that our society is so digitally saturated, I actually think that the contemplative tradition and what the contemplative tradition has offered to the church through the ages is precisely like the piece of the wider Christian heritage that might be the most salient for us right now, because that's where we're really aching. We just do not live lives that are conducive to that type of attending expectancy. I write about having a heart of expectancy to God speaking to us throughout the day.